Welcome to Dark Loops Productions She-Hulking, a podcast for discussing the Marvel series She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher at Illinois State University.
I am Dr. Shelly Clevenger, a professor and chair at Sam Houston State University for the Department of Victim Studies.
And today we come together for the She-Hulking after party. So welcome everyone to the after party. You can woo-hoo if you want. Come on. What I'm going to do is go around my screen, have you introduce yourself, say a little something to the crowd about what you do, and then say just a little bit about why this show may have been important to you or why you liked it so much. And we'll start with Elizabeth.
Okay. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Smith is my American name. My Korean name is Yipang Shil. Pronouns she, her, hers, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist, mostly based out of the Chicagoland area and telehealth at this time. And I also work with a few different nonprofits, including NAP Chicago, the National Association of Asian American Professionals, and the Asian Mental Health Collective. And I'm super stoked to be here today. I love talking comics, love talking psychology, and very honored to be here. So thank you.
So we're excited to have you here. So just a little something about what this show meant to you, something along those lines.
Yeah, so there were a lot of aspects that I really loved. I loved the humor. I loved how each of these Marvel shows have been very different in different ways. There are, I think, still some things that we could talk about as far as like question marks still, like what's going on with this character still.
No, fantastic.
Right?
Yeah.
But overall, I think that it achieved its goal of being a comedy. I think it achieved a lot of goals related to putting in a female perspective in a very different way that Marvel hasn't tackled yet. And I really think there's so much to talk about as far as what we really liked and the characters that they introduced.
Yeah.
And how they set up a lot for things moving forward.
Yeah, they certainly did, didn't they? So we're very glad that you're here. How about you, Sistah Kay?
I am Sistah Kay, aka my real name's Kelsey, and I am one of the co-hosts of Sistah Production series of podcasts where we discuss TV and movies from a sister's point of view. And I'm in Dallas also. I liked She-Hulk. I think at first I wasn't really drawn to it. I think I mentioned before I wasn't going to watch it. But then after hearing y'all's commentary about the first couple of episodes, I said, okay, I got to go watch this and see for myself. Because I was a fan of the original Incredible Hulk back in the day when it was
back in the day.
I'm old.
Bill Bixby. I have to say that every time it comes
Bill
up.
Bixby, Lou Ferrigno.
Cannot forget Bill Bixby.
So I really love that episode where they kind of did the intro.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was fantastic.
Jennifer. But I think what I like the most is the conversation. Well, I love the humor, like you said, but I also like the seriousness behind the humor or the seriousness with the humor. I don't know. Because I feel like that's how I kind of go through life. I mean, I enjoy life, but I also have serious moments, but I have funny moments, and I'm more tend to try to go through things with humor. But I like how they put that in the appropriate way, because you're not going to always be one or the other. And I really like the theme throughout the season of her identity and who is she as a woman, but now she's this superhero, and how they really talked about, it seems like a lot of people prefer her as her She-Hulk persona and not herself, and how that made her feel, and those little touches that they had throughout of her realizing that, and how does she cope with that.
It's fantastic. We're so glad you're here. I loved your comment about living a life of humor and seriousness, and we'll come back to that, because some of us, when we create jokes, we suddenly become so self-critical. Should I have said that joke? and it becomes a very human situation. How about you, Benjamin?
I am Benjamin Taitz. I am a registered psychological associate in California, I work in forensic and clinical psychology, finishing my dissertation hopefully in February.
Congrats, man.
Unfortunately, it doesn't write itself. So
no, that
that's
does not happen. There's no AI for that yet, man.
Not yet. And I am the co-host of two mental health related podcasts, Mental Health Quest and My Hero Therapy. And this show, I like that it was so different than what I expected. I actually don't really remember what I expected. I just thought, okay, like courtroom drama, I think is what I thought, but with superheroes. I think I expected something like along the lines of Law and Order meets superheroes. And it was different. And it wasn't like bad different. It was like, oh shit, this is funny. And I just kind of want to like keep going with it. It just was so easy to get like flowed into. Like I wasn't, trying to get into it. It just happened. And so I feel like it was a very open show. It really just allowed everyone to just kind of like find something in it. And I also liked the kind of juxtaposition of the Jen versus She-Hulk identities and like who's who and who's the better or the real. And that was that theme throughout the whole show. I thought was really well done.
No, fantastic. The executive or the chief writer, Jessica Gao, was also the chief writer on the Pickle Rick episode of Rick and Morty. If you've ever seen the Pickle Rick episode, it is the only
episode of Rick and Morty I've ever seen.
It is such a beautiful examination of the therapeutic setting. It really is very clever. And when I saw that she was like chief writer, this is going to be what I'll call Rick and Morty level humor. I'm a big fan of Rick and Morty. They can get pretty foul, but that's fine. All right, then. So we're all here. So what I asked all of you to do is sort of pick your favorite episode, favorite theme, favorite idea, whatever. And, Shelly, would you be willing to go first?
Yes. So my favorite episode, Ribbit and Rip It or Rip It and Ribbit. I can't remember.
Ribbit and Rip It.
Yes. Was my favorite.
Yeah.
It was my favorite because it was, I thought, really funny. Not that they aren't all funny. I liked Daredevil not being so serious because not that I dislike Daredevil, because I like Daredevil, but the show was very serious and very like Batman brooding, like dark, and so I liked that it was light and fun, and we got to see Matt Murdock smile and laugh, and we got to see just, superheroes being people in a way that I appreciate. Not that I don't love the dramatics, but I'm somebody who likes to see the real, like the behind the mask kind of stuff. So that one was my favorite. Although I did like the finale too.
No, I loved the Daredevil bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we talked about, I thought it was a real achievement to bring such a brooding superhero with all that Catholic guilt into a comedy and have it work where he got to play the drop dead sexy side of himself, as opposed to the brooding superhero. And not just anybody can pull that off. Not just any writer, not just any actor. That it rocked. And I'm excited to see how they try to integrate that relationship into movies. Because I think that would give the movies a sophisticated comedic edge that I don't think they've had. So yeah, I absolutely love that episode. Anybody else on that episode? Ribbit and Rip It.
I like that episode also for much of the same reasons, but also because like at the beginning of the episode or like as episodes progressing, you think, oh, okay, we're gonna get the real like serious nature of the show finally. Like she's gonna be a superhero. She's gonna finally like take on that superhero identity.
Right.
And that happened, and then she smashed Matt Murdock, which is totally fine. I'm not jealous at all. But But I thought it was just really interesting also because she was, she takes her lawyer identity so seriously, because that is who she was prior to getting her powers, and she built her life around that, and that was her life. And because it was all crumbling at the beginning, it all crumbled at the beginning of the show, for her to kind of really take the seriously. Okay, I've got this client, I'm representing this client and defending him, and she took that so seriously, and I like that. But then, of course, her client was lying to her, and was actually a villain, or just a spoiled rich kid. And it was just so interesting because I don't remember if Matt Murdock said it, but I'm pretty sure he did. Or he's like, yeah, the clients lie to you, or something like that. Or maybe that's another legal drama that I watched. But it's just, she just took his word for it, which I get. Like, the attorney is supposed to take your side and everything, but also they should, I feel, question you.
I would always have a private investigator investigate all of my clients if I were an attorney. I wouldn't. No way. Absolutely.
It's, you always have to kind of, I guess, when you work in that legal system, you always have to take, with a grain of salt what they say. Yeah. Like, trust but verify, I guess, But I thought it was really interesting because she was so dedicated to her client that when it turned out that her client was actually the bad guy, she was like, what? Like, she was like in shock.
You're lying? Exactly.
Her sincerity about her job did not meet with reality, and she was kind of stuck. But she recovered very quickly, and she's like, okay, let's go and stop them then, because she knew that was the right thing. Like, yes, he's her client, but he's also a criminal. And so she's going to do what she can to stop him. And I just loved the tit for tat that she had with Daredevil about the math and counting. And I was just like, what?
That was pretty good.
I feel like more superheroes need to have that conversation.
I loved how she went into the Murdoch world, right? And went after the client, and there was just pure joy on her face the whole time. There was no brooding. She picked up that car and threw it. It needed to be done. She was smiling while she was doing it. And I thought that was fairly honest, right? This is a new power she's expressing, and the sense of justice that comes with it, I'm sure, is rather gratifying. I thought they handled that very well. He's an experienced brooder. So, there he was. I like the idea of, I'm not going to say him coaching, but him being in that world with her as she makes her way into it. And anyone else on Ribbit and Rip It?
I really like that one too. I like the chemistry that they had. I like the little banter that they had as well. And I don't know, just when they allow the actors to kind of just look at each other or say something and let it sit there. But I also like this episode because she had to kind of grapple with the fact that she didn't want to take the case because it was against her designer. And I love that designer, by the way. That character.
Yeah.
But the fact that she went in and she was like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I have to tell him that he's getting sued and let's try to work this out. And he got mad and threw her out. And then she got mad and so they basically were trying to try this case with anger. She realized her client was in the wrong. She was trying to get back in the good graces. But I mean, just that whole dynamic between her she had to do this case for her job, but then also trying to, I don't know, save face with a new friend or someone that knew who she, knew more about her, was trying to help her, and then trying to then make it right. And I think Daredevil, Matt Murdock, told her, he kind of put that idea in her head, you can do what you do during your day job and still do good with what you do as She-Hulk later. Like, you can help protect people in both identities, which kind of, I think, brings her more to synergizing them both instead of thinking of them as two different people, or herself as two different people. Anyway.
No, I agree. They worked hard at the beginning of the series to establish her as a middle-class woman who coming from a middle-class family. So her identity doesn't have the privilege associated. It's not as easy for her to fall into the lawyering identity as someone who came from money. You can see that expressed in the guy she works with, who she represents. It's Megan this time.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see it in her boss, who has absolutely no self-anxiety whatsoever. Right. And you can see them walking in their identities. And it's I like the way they made it clear that she's working for this, and she's bothered when people don't give her the respect she deserves according to the merits of her behavior. Right. And what I enjoy about that is, even those other people are walking in their identities, there's a lot of competition going on in the office all the time to, who's the biggest scientist, who's the biggest lawyer, who's the biggest this. And I liked her vulnerabilities revealing that dynamic when people can pretend it, doesn't exist. So I really like the way they built her character to be at that point. It was, this whole season for me was a fantastic origin story, one of the better I've seen. Right. Yeah. Anybody else on Ribbit and Rip It? All right then. Sistah Kay.
I think she's
go ahead. Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was muted. I was just going to say it was a really great juxtaposition to the case she took with Wong as well, where Wong's initial, for some reason, even though he is the Sorcerer Supreme, is like, I'm going to go after this guy legally.
Right.
For whatever reason, he's like, we need to, go after this guy in court. Whereas, it's such an interesting, piece to that, because it ends up not working out that way either. Right. But, with Wong's case, it had a very different feel to it. And I mean, I was left wondering, like, would they have something in place, though, if someone defects and takes this, like, surely this guy would not have been the first person to defect, right? And take the, skills and the magic in this way, going off rogue. But yeah, it was such an interesting way to go about those two cases. And it was also, of course, really interesting in comparison to the case that they took on, forgetting his name now, the guy that couldn't die, Mr. Immortal.
Mr. Immortal.
Yes. Right. And so all of these cases that she took on, because for a courtroom humorous comedy piece, right? If we look at all of the cases, there was a bit of a drama within each of them, and some of them, even the one involving herself, right, and Titania. And then, of course, you have the case that she took on with Emmanuel. Right. It was all such different kinds of feels to them. And they required different types of her skill level, whether it was, I'm going to go in and embarrass myself completely. I'm going to use, all of my law tactics, or I'm going to go in and be the Hulk. Right, the She-Hulk that she is, and like which aspects of herself is she going to use, which talents, and
no, that's a fantastic point. So they use the courtroom as a way to express all her diversity within herself. I think that's a theme in the post-blip MCU. Pre-blip MCU, it was, let's start telling a story about a rich narcissistic white guy. And then let's deconstruct that character with increasing amounts of diversity. And in the end, let's have all that diversity come together and defeat the big baddie. And so the diversity was kind of a between person diversity. In the MCU's now post-blip, it seems like, the diversity is within the person themselves more and more. And how do I deal with do I have to reconcile? Do I have to be one person? Is it okay to be multiple folks? And so I kind of like that vibe, and the courtroom gave him a place to do that. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very different kind of integration story than Bruce's integration story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
And, you know, for her, she was very much trying to hold on to being Jen and not being She-Hulk.
You know, I like what you just said. And if you guys don't mind chatting about this idea of identity tension, right? Because one of the curses of American culture is this rampant individualism that makes some people believe that they are who they are because of themselves, and they have this very robust sense of, you know, independence. I made my way, I became who I am, and on my own work, and you know, I built this road myself, that kind of stuff, right? And we put that pressure on, you know, ourselves, and we then end up denying the sort of culturally dependent nature, the socially dependent nature of who we are. And I just like a character like this, who doesn't walk around. We get to see her trying out her role, what you might call pretending. It's not pretending, it's just trying out a role, going back and forth. Yeah, I just thought that was something we don't often see in the MCU, let alone movies and TV shows, is people trying on different identities and not being weak or indecisive because they don't make a decision.
Yeah. Sorry. I noticed when you were talking about that, I was like thinking back to like the earlier MCU movies, and like they always showed like, okay, yeah, they showed how they became the hero, but in almost all of those movies, the hero was perfectly willing to be the hero. They once they saw that opportunity, they like went with it, and they didn't really struggle as much with that identity issue. And so I agree that like this concept of being able to like try on identities and find out which one really is for you, and because you have a point about the whole like she built her identity as Jen. She said it in the first episode. You know, she went to law school. She's all this, you know, law school debt, and she's worked hard to be, you know, a district attorney, which is, you know, it takes a long road to get there, I assume. And then that's all taken away from her. So who is she left with?
Exactly.
And so I thought that was really interesting because, yeah, Bruce didn't really have that, and Iron Man definitely didn't have that. Iron Man just flat out told everybody, I'm Iron Man, and you know, peace out.
Exactly.
So I thought that was a really good kind of interesting like look at the ways that they showed identity.
I think another thing that they did, similar to some other characters, the most notorious villains that she has come up against, or, you know, even when we're talking about, you know, the Ribbit and Ribbit episode, right? Or we're talking about Titania, or we're talking about these are people who wanted these powers, and they wanted it very, very much. And it's such an interesting contrast to how much she didn't want that, and how much what she wanted and who she looked up to was Mallory, right? Someone who is this really chic lawyer who's successful and shops at a place where they obviously valet, and that's her role model, and that's who she wants to be. And yeah, she, you know, grew up being very close to Bruce in the comics history lore, but that wasn't who she wanted to be like, right? And then she wanted to forge this different path. And in some ways, I think through the people that she comes up against and the characters she comes up against, it also really says a lot about what she's also internally struggling with.
Absolutely. All right. Any final comments on Ribbit and Rip It? Okay, Sistah Kay. Kelsey, what's your favorite character, scene, episode?
Oh gosh. I think my favorite episode was the retreat.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's
Most
so many
of.
that I like, but the retreat was one of the ones that I love. I don't know the name of it. I love the one where she had to defend her name against Titania because we got a little bit more information about her coworker.
Yeah.
Was it that the one after? Can't remember. But anyway, I like where we get to see some of the other folks that she works with. But retreat, I don't know why in particular I like that one so much, but I think it's because she actually talks through her emotions. Like she just hooked up with that guy that she really liked, Josh. He's not answering her. So she's, so obsessed with trying to wait for an answer from him that she can't even enjoy, the retreat really until she's forced to kind of take part in that group session. And I loved all the different characters they had in that group session also.
Yeah, I did.
So, and I don't know, I know that we talked about this in another podcast, but Shelly, you mentioned that Abomination is really a terrible, terrible person. But I actually enjoy him on this series, at least what I know of him, because he hasn't done anything too terrible really yet. But I really enjoy the fact that, he obviously is changing into himself because his little wrist angle thing is going off, but he's actually trying to help other people come. And I don't know why, I just love that therapy group session where he's just like, okay, talk about your feelings. We don't do this, we do that. And him trying to get everyone to really kind of open up and kind of realize who they are, and her going through that conversation with all of them, and them, kind of validating her as Jen and not as She-Hulk. I like that. I don't know why I like it, but I really like that episode a lot.
I'm going to give the therapist first dibs on responding to that.
There is something to be said about the wounded healer and someone who's gone through the journey. And in an interesting, way, Bruce tried to do that with Jen early on.
He did, actually. He did.
He's like, this is DPT.
Yeah. And here's my notes.
It's such an interesting thing too, especially how in some ways people will judge you for your past, and being careful about disclosure and being careful about certain journeys and things. And yet how much do people gravitate towards that? Because if some of these people had gone to that retreat, had this not been the Abomination, had this not been someone who understands what it's like in a lot of ways, who has walked this path. The question I have though is, what happened to his soulmates?
Oh, snap.
Right. And even at the end, he's just like, okay, I'm going to dip out with Wong. And I'm like, oh, but.
Yeah, you're right.
That's a good point. What did happen to them?
Well, in the post-credit scene of that episode, he was taken off in a van and they were all kind of crying on the street because he was leaving them behind. So I think it was mean. I think he took their money and ran. I mean, that's the only data we had from what I remember seeing that scene. Yeah. I like your concept of the wounded healer, right? I like the idea of people who can not just cognitively empathize with one's struggle, but actually feel one's struggle because they felt it themselves. I'm not at all here to say that that's a prerequisite for doing good therapy. And I don't believe that's the case. There is something about it, though, that they drew on well in this show. And I mean, the whole season was Shelly like, I'm telling you, Abomination is a bad dude. And I'm completely open to that. I loved the diversity of maleness that we saw in that episode, The Retreat. And I loved the fact that the writers took the time to give every cultural, whatever you want to call it, group, whatever groupings we do, gave them opportunities to be complex. So there wasn't any one-sided group. There were white males who were respectable. There were white males who were privileged right? And I just appreciate the writing. We've got 9 hours, man, right? So let's take our time and make sure that we spread complexity around. And I love, and the therapist, please let me know if I'm making any sense. Her resistance to opening up is probably pretty typical. And suddenly she finds herself in it, and it helps. And I think that kind of resistance, letting down barriers and helping, is something that the group setting really fosters, because you're sort of being carried through this thing, as opposed to just you and a therapist. So I'll shut up on that and let the experts let us know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The group is really good for breaking down resistance, because it's kind of like, if you think about like exposure therapy, in that you're slowly exposing someone to their fear, but with group therapy, you're exposing the person to the breaking down of resistance. They're seeing other people that are their level, that their peers, opening up about something that is uncomfortable. Then they it's hard to maintain that resistance in the face of that, because in a one-on-one setting, well, then the client who is resistant can easily be like, well, you don't understand me, like you can't understand me. But in a group where they're all coming from a similar kind of experience, they do understand you. So if they who have gone through similar things can open up, then it kind of helps them, the resistant client, to open up as well. I also really like that portrayal, and I talked about this in the episode of the podcast that I was on, just because I primarily do group therapy with my clients, and so I see that a lot. But I also really like the retreat for a different reason, and it was also about Abomination. So I was never much aware of Abomination's story in the comics until after he showed up in the Hulk movie. I had to like go back and like reread about him and everything. But I thought that the way that they portrayed Abomination in this show was almost like a redemption, kind of like, yes, he did bad things and he allowed the intelligentsia into, to do this, but like I didn't get the feeling like he was like purposely trying to promote their group. I think they didn't tell him what it was that they were like fighting against. I think he just wants to keep his speaking, and he wants to show, this is how he does it. And he's all about just letting everyone express themselves no matter what they're expressing. And he did like try to like help Jen during the initial part of that like scene where he like grabs her and like pulls her out of the way. But the episode of the retreat, it really showed like what redemption might look like. Here's someone who did bad things, whether like he intended to do bad things or he was just following orders, that's the legal side of it. But from the psychological perspective, he was trying to do different. He was trying to build a new version of himself, a new identity, if we're going to keep up with the identity, like trying out things. And I also kind of was like, wait, where's his wives? I don't know if he got married to them or not, but like it was like that's what I thought it was. Like they wrote to him while he was in prison, and then like stuff happened. Like, no, I know that happens in real life, that there are like those people that like hear the stories of these criminals and they'll write letters and like form really strong attachments to these criminals and that they don't actually know. And that's pretty sure that's what they were making fun of. But I was also just like, do they live in that area also? Like they gave them the land for the retreat, but did they just like buy the land, or was it already theirs? Did they know each other before that? Like were they all friends or something? Like they all dressed the same. They all even looked very similar. So I was very confused as to their relationship with each other. But we see that Abomination, or Emil, however you want to call him, because we were talking about identity, he tried to do what he felt he was good at. In prison, he was good at talking to people about their issues and calming people down and doing meditation and everything. And so he was like, okay, maybe this can be my new identity.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was actually a really good portrayal of someone who did bad things, finds a new strength, and is able to use that strength to do good, even if he doesn't always succeed in doing good, but at least he tried. And that's absolutely like really true for, you know, a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to respond about
Please.
Abomination. You know, I don't like Abomination, right? But I will say, I'm going to say two things. One, he did write a letter to Bruce, you know, while he was in prison, sort of, you know, they said they had kind of hashed it out. Whether that was sincere or not, you know, we all can decide that. I also want to say I agree about the wives or the soulmates, however you want to call it. So in one of my classes, I teach about this. It's called hybristophilia. It's a sexual attraction to people who commit crime, or like the bad boys. And so because I don't like Abomination, I will say that he probably knew that these sorts of women exist in the world and preyed upon that to help him in his reintegration into society. And so there's some really interesting work that looks at whether people are sincerely looking for a person on the outside, or they're just looking for someone to help them transition. So, I mean, it's up to the viewers, right? I'm going to say Abomination's a bad dude, and he probably preyed on these women, but I'm going to be hopeful, and that the letter he wrote to Bruce was sincere, and that he is trying to change his identity.
I mean, being a bad person and doing good aren't mutually exclusive.
That's true.
And the complexities of the lived life, you know, certain things happen and we put that's a good one, that's a bad, you know, but there's a whole complex tornado of human being underneath that. And for him, well, of course I'm going to take their money because I got to help people. And in his brain, that's not a contradiction. What I really liked about how they did his character is that he took the money, yes. And in order to sustain his new identity, which we tend to think of as an internal phenomenon, he recreated his own world by buying a camp and actually putting his body in a space that would let him sustain that identity. I think one of the things that challenges people when they're trying to change their identity is that they don't change the space they're in. And that space doesn't afford them that change, right? And so, you know, I just like, I don't know if it was a purposeful or not, but I like the way they had him create a new space to be who he is. And I would hope that we'd be in a culture that would provide people that opportunity, right? To go somewhere else and figure out who you are there.
Can I add a few things?
You can add a lot of things, absolutely.
Well, one thing, right, if the theory is that these 7 women approached him because they liked a bad guy, a bad boy, and then he's no longer a bad boy. Is that potentially why they're not around as much, right? Like there's that question.
You know what? That's why they're crying as the bus drives off, because he's no longer a bad guy.
Right. And so there could be a variety of components to this. And
there you go.
At what point did they start exchanging letters? And at what point, right, did this soulmate connection happen? And I don't know, right? And they don't really explore that in the story. One thing that they do explore in the retreat that I think is meaningful to talk about when it comes to Jen and a variety of different superhero portrayals, you know, with the group therapy setting. You know, one of the leading group therapy people that we usually get a textbook of when we're studying therapy would be Irvin Yalom. And I recall
Oh no, I don't have his book. I thought I had his book up there.
You're like, let me find it.
Yeah, no, I could have sworn I had it here somewhere.
And well, so one of the passages that I recall very, very much so that I often reference is what he says about confrontation and how confrontation comes from a place of caring because it's not comfortable. And so when you are confronted with someone, and he's talking specifically in the group setting, but it's so meaningful even outside of that, that it's uncomfortable to do so. But so to do a confrontation, you're saying, I care about you. I care about our relationship. And I care about that more than the discomfort of the confrontation. And it's so much different than an attack because the intention and what your goal is with an attack, you're trying to hurt someone. And with confrontation, you're coming from a place of caring. And it's such a different kind of interaction that one doesn't have to do an attack where it's this physical kind of experience, which is, at times, even where Jen finds herself, right, when she's hulking out in a way, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a very different kind of relating to people and a different kind of battle in a lot of ways when she is doing confrontations and when people are confronting her as well. And it's being modeled in this way of we can confront each other and do it in a place of caring and coming from a place of caring and not in a place of I'm going to make you do something or, right, these kind of very large ways that we see superheroes, right? And I'm very hopeful that we're going to see more of Titania and there's going to be some sort of resolution with that character and with their storyline together, because I'm still, in that place of there, multiple different ways in which she attacks Jen and not coming from a place of caring.
No.
Right? But some of the other, ways of doing this, I think are, it definitely pulls a whole different aspect of understanding the human condition and, integrating these fragmented aspects of self. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you're saying you hope they do a better job with Titania than they did with Wanda in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse. They actually took a very complex character and simplified her tremendously, all for the sake of making a horror movie. And we've said that more than once on the podcast. It's a huge loss, I would argue. And so we'll see how they try to make up for it. Benjamin, I interrupted you.
It's okay. While you were talking about Titania and like her attacking, but not out of place of caring, I had this really weird idea. But so a lot of people, have cognitive distortions about like, oh, I'm doing this because I care, but really I'm just being a bad person. What if Titania thought she was helping Jen by like pushing her to fight back and be the strong woman, because Titania basically built her identity as being a strong woman in a physical sense of strength. And then also the social. I don't actually believe this. But I'm playing devil's advocate in my head.
There you go. Doing some writing.
Talking like, because she's taunting Jen. She's like, you could turn into the green one, be the strong person, stop being this meek person. What if that was Titania's way of helping? Again, I don't actually believe that, but it's funny to think about.
That's another good thing they did a good thing they did in this. I like the way they presented Mallory. I like the way she had her borders with Jen. She had her own personal space that she controlled herself. I like the way in the episode when I think it was Ribbit and Rip It at the end where she was receiving the award and Mallory says, Jen, don't do it. Jen, don't do it. Because Jen was getting ready to Hulk out. She's basically telling her, you've got to control this image. You have to be in control of how the world sees you. And that's one one way of helping that they showed, and then the other way, if what you're saying about Titania is correct, another way of helping, right, from a different cognitive space. And no, I think that kind of diversity in how people are reacting to Jen and trying to be with Jen is delightful to watch.
I don't know if she's trying to help Jen, Titania, but I do think
we got some serious no's going on.
No.
That wedding episode where they're fighting, where she says something along the lines of, I've had to work really hard to get where I'm at, but you just got it. Like it just happened to you. And now everybody's talking about you and you didn't even work for it or want it. So I feel like there's some kind of, I don't know. I hate to say jealousy, but it's like, no, why did this happen to you and not happen to me? And then you took away my livelihood with taking away the fact that I trademarked your name, which was, weird.
Yeah, she's the victim, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there is some depth that they're trying to show with Titania, but they haven't had time to really go there. And I'm hoping, because I kind of am interested in that character, to knowing more about her. And I'm hoping that in the next season that we can kind of get more of that, because obviously she's putting herself in situations where she's around Jennifer for whatever reason, to taunt her, to mess with her, mean girl, whatever it is. But there's some reason, and I want them to kind of explore that a little bit more, because it can't just be that she just wants to beat her up all the time. It's got to be something else.
I really, really like what you said there, because the character earns her identity, sustains her identity through a different mechanism than Mallory, right? And through a different mechanism, a system of work than Jen's generated in her life by going to law school and such. And I would love to see Jen be a coach for her, right? Just like Daredevil's a coach for Jen to some extent, Mallory's a coach for Jen. I do like this idea of learning and sharing and, lifting each other up. So that would be a fantastic arc to follow.
I don't know about the lifting each other up part.
You don't think so?
They can still be kind of like frenemies, but like I would like to know more about, I'd like to know a little bit more about her and why she's, surrounding herself with Jen's life and stuff.
I mean, for me, she's in that world of media popularity. I think that's Titania's thing, is her identity is sustained by likes and media attention, whereas Jen's identity is sustained by courtroom events and, in a different medium. And the sustaining your identity and in the media world, you make yourself so vulnerable to the whims and fancies of everybody. That I'm not surprised that people who live that life are volatile, right? Because the feedback mechanisms for telling you're who you are just so volatile, where if you're an attorney, you're an attorney, and you have your bad days and you have your good days, but you're in a different world than someone trying to be an Instagram what's the word, guys? Help me on them. Influencer. Thank you very much. I mean, it's kind of like trying to be a rock star, right? You make yourself vulnerable to the personal opinion more than. All right, I'm going to shut up on that line. We're going to go to Benjamin here. Benjamin, what was your favorite part of the series?
All of it?
All of it. Fair enough.
No.
We can go meta. It's totally cool.
We're gonna go super meta. No, actually, I really liked it was one of the first couple episodes when she was first having to defend Abomination, and she was going through all of that. Like, she's so happy to have this new job, but she's torn because there is a conflict of interest, regardless of if the client, waived the conflict of interest. The attorney still has that conflict of interest inside of them. I really liked that episode because it showed a lot of depth to Jen and her values and, her worldview. And it also really showed that, even when you don't like someone, because she did not like Abomination, she had issues with him, he was a bad dude, as Shelly would say. She still did her job to defend him as best she could. And he did not make it easy for her.
No.
Because he was just like, yeah, no, I'll just do whatever. And like, I thought that it was a really good episode because it showed that, we can do what we feel is right, even when it's not easy for us, and even when we really don't want to. And I know, like, so I have a picture on my wall. So I'm looking on my wall. I have a picture of Stan Lee, and there's a quote that says, another definition of a hero is someone who is concerned about other people's well-being and will go out of his or her way to help them, even if there's no chance for reward. The person who helps others simply because it should be done or must be done, and because it is the right thing to do, is indeed, without a doubt, a real superhero. And here we have Jen that, well, technically she's getting paid for it, but it's still the right thing to do to defend the client to the best of your ability, even if you don't like the client. And I thought that was a really good way to show her as a superhero, as a legal superhero, and as a superhero. I just thought that it was a really good representation of that. So that was, I think, my favorite scene, was that whole parole board hearing.
I love the fact that when she won, she said yes. In other words, they did a really good job of, okay, she's not her lawyer identity. She's not walking in it yet, right? She's getting there, and this is how you get there. You have these achievements, and then over a while, you sort of slow burn expect these things to happen to you, but she doesn't unconsciously expect to be successful. And so when you create a character who has that kind of energy, it just lets us all learn about what it's like to try to become someone. And they just really paid a lot of attention to the psychology of trying to be someone. And so the one hand, she's mad at, dude, don't say that. On the other hand, she wins. Yes. And just the back and forth of the emotion was fantastic. And the actress nailed it. I loved her in Orphan Black. I loved her in this role. It was amazing. Anybody else on that episode or that scene or that predicament? All right, then we shall move on to Elizabeth.
Well, I was going to add something previously when we were talking about Titania, but yeah. I think it also ties into what we were just talking about, which is, coming into identity and acceptance. And, when you were describing Titania as an Instagram influencer and, her need for external validation. And, one of the things that is it's not purely like a Western concept, but it is definitely much more emphasized in Western culture, is self-esteem focused.
Yeah.
So, which, depending on how you define self-esteem, but it's more along the lines of how much positive regard do you have for yourself at one specific time? And it's very much influenced on something temporary that just happened, right? So how many likes did I just get?
Yeah.
And if I didn't get those likes, then my self-esteem is lower, and it's not consistent. Whereas self-compassion is more of this acceptance that, suffering is a part of life, and suffering is going to occur, and failures are going to occur, and embarrassments are going to occur.
Yes.
And with Jen's character, with regards to her acceptance of, I am Jen and She-Hulk. And at times she wants to be more She-Hulk because that's who people really like. And she's glamorous, and she talks about that and about how, uncomfortable she's feeling with this identity that she used to feel much more in tune with. And, moving towards that integration, is a huge piece. And I think, even though I still don't think Titania is doing it on purpose, I do think that the purpose of a female villain that portrays a lot of these aspects is something that does help us see Jen, fully more integrated in that way. And
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well,
no, please go ahead.
But yeah, so I do think that in a lot of ways, that is a whole, huge part of the show. And I forgot where I was going with it because
I interrupted you. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. No, it's okay. No, I love what your comparisons, cross-cultural comparisons are terribly important. Non-Western cultures tend to experience themselves personally as a part of bigger things. There isn't so much cultural emphasis on me defining who I am.
And that was, I think, something that I was going towards, because that
there you go.
How a hero is someone that's thinking of others, and I'm like, but that's standard in collectivistic cultures.
Yes,
that's just how it is. And
yes,
so this idea of like, well, what makes a superhero? It does, I think, depend on perspective in a few different ways, because to me, thinking of others shouldn't necessarily be so unique in so many ways. And taking care of others, really, like, why is that so unique? And
I think you just explained Squid Game. Right? I mean, seriously, the protagonist in Squid Game is a dude, right? And he's a little down on his luck, and he gets put into this space, and he helps everybody, and he's finds different ways to involve everybody in trying to stay alive, and makes his choices. And then I won't spoil season 1, but it's been over a year. He wins, and what does he do? He says, I'm going to go back. I'm going to save more people. You're absolutely right. And I think one of the reasons why we spend so much time in Western culture amplifying individuals who help each other is because we know that's what we are deep down. And we're culturally persuaded that we're not about each other, that somehow that's got to be something we work at. And the neuroscience is pretty clear these days. What we work at is keeping people out. People can get into us pretty easily. We resonate to people's emotions and thoughts instantly if we just pay attention to them. What we learn over our life course is who we're going to give that access to. And that means who are we going to keep in, who we're going to let in, and who we're going to keep out. In American culture, at least, that just gets so amplified that we... Go ahead, please.
Do you think there's anything too, like just on your example, Squid Games, he doesn't think about others though in his real life before he gets put into the Squid Game.
Oh, here we go. We're going left on Squid Game. I love it.
No, but is this,
yes,
I'm trying to put the correlation, because he's thinking only of himself. He snatches all the money from his mother, his daughter, anywhere he can get it. And then once he gets to this situation, then he starts thinking about others. Is that supposed to be a commentary on us? Like, are we so selfish? I don't know what the word is, not selfish, but like, are we so focused on ourselves as individuals that it's not until we have a life or death situation or something happen that we start thinking about taking care of other people?
Well, so Squid Game is on the floor, folks. But I mean,
also, like in this show or any other show, maybe there is something to that where it's always portrayed as being an individual stuck in your own mind, your own way, doing for yourself. And then something happens and you go, oh, I need to be paying more attention to those around me. What's more important? It's not just about me. I don't know if there's any correlation to that. But in the Squid Game, it's specifically that example.
Yeah.
I'm like, he doesn't really think about others until he gets put in that situation.
No, so I'm going to agree, and then I'm going to say a bit, and then everybody else, please feel free to respond. Because when he's trying to win all that money, It's because he identifies himself as a social being who's failing his kid, failing his relationship with his wife, and failing his mom. So he steals from his mom. And he's doing all that because his identity is so socially embedded. I don't know that collectivism is something I would call good. It's different. And, how we express ourselves in relation to others is, constrained quite a bit by the differences in the cultures. But yes, he is trying to win money, and I don't think he's winning that money. I think he's winning that money so we can try to do something to reestablish himself as a respectable social being. But I don't know. That's my take on it. Everybody else, please. No Squid Game takers.
I actually haven't seen it, so
okay.
I can't speak to this.
Yeah, you're in for a treat. I think
it's fantastic.
I think that, yes, y'all are making excellent points on, several aspects of, things, and definitely, not to say that one culture is better, or worse than another. But I do think, when we look at the hero's journey, part of that is that there's this reluctant call to the hero, right? That's usually turned down. And one of the great things about, whether we're talking about Squid Games or we're talking about She-Hulk, is that there is a person who didn't necessarily go into these situations wanting to be the hero. And it was someone who literally was supposed to be like, I'm an everyday person. And now I'm in this situation. And even though I'm an everyday person, look at these amazing, things that can be done. And I think that is very powerful in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, Kelsey, when I watched the Squid Game, I had the exact reaction you did about his behavior in that first episode or so. And then I actually podcasted Squid Game with some colleagues who made it quite clear to me I did not understand his character. So I very much experienced him as being an individualistic, kind of taking care of his own hedonistic desires. And so I had explained to me by others and whatever. But yeah, so we're at this interesting point where we're talking about She-Hulk, Squid Game's on the table. I think what I'm going to do is just do a very non-gracious shift. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it would be my turn to talk about. If I asked everyone, I've asked everyone. We've all talked. All right. So mine's pretty straightforward. I love humor. And I think humor is a very important part of adult life. Yet I think what we don't respect about humor is that it's risky, because humor is a poetic form of expression. The joke works because people are surprised by what you said, and the surprise will land differently with different people. So, it's risky to do humor. And what I loved about the way they did the humor here, if Jem were to make a joke, she was almost instantly very self-conscious of the fact that she had been funny and that someone could have been insulted. And I just liked that adult approach to humor. Jen could easily be funny and then be self-deprecating in a way that reminded me of Mary Tyler Moore, the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And I know I'm aging myself, but I just like, it's refreshing to me to see an understanding of humor, that it is risky and that adult life is a little more boring without it. Yet at the same time, because it's poetic, people can be insulted by what you say. And so I just love the fact that they did those things that some people may have been offended by. Some people may have been offended by the guy sitting in a circle during the episode on the retreat, right? I just thought, well, if we don't take the risk to be poetic in how we talk about each other, then we're all going to try to be analytic, and that's a little less adult for me. So I just loved the show's understanding of the relationship between humor and regret, or humor and potential regret. So there's no particular episode I'm pointing to. I just love the humor. All right, that wasn't supposed to be a non-starter, y'all, but if that was a non-starter, that's perfectly fine.
Well, actually, it is. I was thinking about how you started when you're talking in the beginning of our recording about seriousness and humor, and I thought it was serious humor. It was seriously humorous. It was, they did a really good job of balancing those two aspects. A lot of shows that try to include humor in something that's more serious don't always succeed.
No.
It takes a very special kind of writing to be able to balance those, and I think that they did a good job with the mix of seriousness and humor.
Yes, to be able to do that whole circle in the retreat and have us laughing the whole time, yet have Jen come to true catharsis, right, was brilliant. And not many people can handle that as a writer. And I don't think many people can handle it as actors. Comedy is really hard to do, to do it well, particularly when you're doing a serious topic. So I love the quality of the writing, the acting, and the grace with which they handle those situations. And I'll say this and shut up. The humor is the Trojan horse. The humor is what keeps people watching. And people would not sit and watch a documentary about, well, they might sit and watch a documentary about group therapy, right? But this gets to a larger group of people. All the things that were sincere about that scene got into the people who watched it. And I think that's the Trojan horse quality, a good writing. They can deny that they saw it, but it's forever in there somewhere. So I love that. Okay, then, any final comments about She-Hulk?
I was just going to add on that humor and sci-fi are wonderful ways to make very serious topics more palatable. And, whether we're talking Star Trek, whether we're talking She-Hulk, right, there were definitely some very serious themes that we were able to cover in a show that typically wouldn't have been covered in mainstream media. And, to their credit.
What? Please go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Let's go on with that topic.
No. You finished what you were going to say, please. I got this. I got the time.
I was going to say, when we talk about humor and we talk about favorite episodes, that the most humorous episode is the Mean Green and Straight Poured into Beach. That is the best name of any episode
ever. That was fantastic. All right, then. Well, let's go ahead and ask everyone to tell the world where they can find you on social media, if you are so inclined. And we will start with Kelsey.
You can find me at our podcast website is sistahspeakproductions.com, and we have links to everywhere you could find our podcast. We're on YouTube, Patreon, Facebook. We have a group there, Twitter. We're everywhere. So
they're everywhere. And I got to tell you what, tune into Sistah Speak Productions, folks. It's fantastic. It's actually my podcasting inspiration, I'll be honest.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for coming and being here and for all the opportunities you've provided me. How about you, Benjamin?
You can find my two podcasts, Mental Health Quest and My Hero Therapy, wherever you listen to podcasts. Mental Health Quest on Facebook and Twitter at MHQ Podcast. And My Hero Therapy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at My Hero Therapy.
Fantastic. How about you, Elizabeth?
I do have an Instagram page, but it's not like a professional one. It's just Lizzie NS, Lizzy, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam. And I haven't made any sort of professional persona whatsoever.
There you go.
I guess I need to. And I guess if people want to contact me for more therapy related stuff, I'm available at a group private practice called Miracare, as well as Orchid Exchange.
Fantastic. Shelly, how about you?
At Dr. Clevenger on Twitter.
Fantastic. You can find all episodes of She-Hulking on YouTube at the Dark Loops Productions channel. If you want to write in, tell us what we got right, what we got wrong. I'd be more than happy to reassemble this crew, and we'll argue with you about what we got right. So I want to thank all of you for being here. Sistah Kay, Kelsey, Benjamin, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us for our after party. Shelly,
Thanks for having us.
oh, you're more than welcome. Shelly, once again, fantastic time over these past couple of months doing the show.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It's been great.
It has been great. And just so I'm going to write down the time. Actually, I don't have to because we're close to the end. So as you know, what we do at the end of this and say, so there it is from all of us to all of you. Big hugs. And remember, smash the patriarchy. Do not wait for me to say smash. Just jump on in, and otherwise we sound like we're trying too hard. All right. So there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs, and remember, smash the patriarchy. All right, bye-bye.